Okay, I just clicked it, recording. So hopefully we get recording now. And then the other part of the finding, the research is really the collectivism and power distance. In high collectivist and high power distance societies, people seem to have a higher tolerance of incivil behaviors in the workplace, especially if the authoritative or the supervisors are rude. So the subordinates are more submissive, and they seem to have a higher degree of acceptance of rude, incivil behaviors. And then there are culture-specific norms and interpretations of incivility. Like again, we talk about the eye contact or some touching. So general cross-cultural, especially the earlier days of cross-cultural trainings, I'll also talk about nonverbal behaviors or gestures that are culturally specific, and the role of interdependence is a buffer for the negative effects. So we want to talk about, yes, there are cultural differences. Yes, there are incivil behaviors in the workplace. How do we deal with that as individuals from the perspectives of the individual, from the perspective of organizations? How do we deal with this? So understanding culture-specific expressions, it may be helpful. Or developing, there's possibilities of developing new professional norm or new expressions that can help as well. We all know the example of Korean Air in the cockpit. There used to be many years ago, they have a very high accident rate. It turned out that because the Korean culture is highly hierarchical, the co-pilot, which is often has a lower status and lower in the power distance rank, lower rank, so they are less likely to speak up. Even they speak up, they were often dismissed by the pilot. So that makes it difficult for them to report like accident or issues in the cockpit. So the new training the Korean Airlines were given is that they only speak English in the cockpit, because English is a more equal language. And sometimes the junior co-pilots often speak the language better than the older generation, the more authoritative pilot. So, but when they are both speaking English, they are more easily for them to voice the differences. It's less likely for the dismissive behaviors of the chief pilot to address the junior pilot. So when they have a new professional language, when they are both speaking English, it's a more equal professional norm that made the junior pilot feel more respected and easy to voice their different opinions and issues in the cockpit. That significantly reduce their accident rate in the Korean Airlines. And then intentional inclusion or spatial cues that can support to develop a better workplace situation, especially when the incivil behaviors, the social exclusion or microaggressions were occurred because of unintentioned, because they were not intentionally happened. So people can be trained to be intentional when they want others, when the like people from speaking different languages to try to use the common language to show that they are inclusive of others. And then there are spatial cues in terms of playing music or relaxing music in the conference room, or use art to give people a common language to speak together. Or when there's a conflict situations, the spatial cues like more accommodating arts or music can sort of break the cycle, the spiral of escalation, to make things better, or even just to take a break that can help in the workplace. And then at the individual level, use a relational buffer, or when we feel tension at work, or being bullied or being abused, or experience aggressions at work, our family, our coworkers, or people who are friendly can be the buffer, can be help to talk out, or organizations can provide relational buffer, meaning they're like ombuds people who can be the rational voice and confidential voice, and who can provide psychologically safe opportunities for people to voice their frustrations, their what the negative experience that can help coping with those situations. And social connections certainly help, like organizations can provide not only professional development opportunities, but also non-work related opportunities outside of the office for people to make connections and to build better relationships. There are also ideas about clarity and flexibility in communication, meaning like for example, in the space, the sensory dimension of nonverbal communication is to not just be careful or learn about other cultures, nonverbal cues, so that you can be clear in the some nonverbal cues, instead of maybe causing unintended outcomes. Flexibility meaning, especially in time, like a hallmark of abusive supervision is like a supervisor just intentionally pushing time deadlines to subordinate, despite like with very short notice, or demanding quick responses, or like on the weekend or non-work hours. So they can try to provide flexibility to in the time adjustment in the work tasks, or not try to manage their time better and be more flexible. Other examples include like gender specific requirements. for women to dress in skirt or high heels, and those are like considered incivil demands in the workplace. So people need to be careful, or organizational leaders need to be careful of that kind of unintentional demands for in the workplace. And individuals, especially victims of workplace incivility, can try to develop resilience and mental toughness. For example, they can communicate when they're facing the incivil behaviors. They can try to, for example, hold steady eye contact, use upright posture, firm stance, to cope with this kind of situation, to communicate. They are mentally tough, can deal with this. So again, the research shows, very limited research show that open communication of and clear communication can help mitigate the negative effects of incivil behaviors in the workplace. So with these, so we develop some research propositions. One is that the negative effects of ostracism on individual felt pain will be moderated by subjective perceptions of exclusion, based on social norms or communication cues on time and space, such that cultural norm congruent communicated ostracism is less threatening than norm incongruent communicated ostracism. Social interdependence at both social, cultural, and individual levels can mitigate the negative effects. Individuals who feel pain because of social interdependence increases target person's resilience to overcome the adversary associated social exclusion. We propose that the negative effects of overt incivility, including abusive supervision, bullying, intentional microaggression, can be alleviated by actively managing the relationship context. So again, this is the social interdependence and social connection buffer that can help people leverage and cope with these situations. Lastly, we propose that proactively manage the communication through space and time may mitigate the negative effects of overt incivility. Understanding, planning, intentional signaling of nonverbal cues that limit interruption could communicate equality and inclusion in the workplace for both individual and organizations. And we propose flexibility and clarity in communication scheduling that can help with these situations. So let me stop here. That's what I prepared for talks about the chapter. I love to have conversations and hear what you have to say or comments.
May I have a question?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much for your really stable and clear presentation for me. And I would just add something related to my experiences in this maybe this problem in this area of nonverbal intercultural communication. After 5 years of staying in Austria, and after experiencing a lot of intercultural communication, I just convinced that maybe for the new organization and for the new generation, there are less feelings of necessity for such a discussion. Most of the time, employers and employees just talk about something related to artificial intelligence, related to maybe home office, and maybe some concept like team working, some concept like working, maybe cooperation, something like that, as something about human communication, that it's my basic maybe worries about our new lifestyle. It's make me frustrated to bring such discussions in my in this maybe in this context of intercultural communication. Most of the time, organizations are not interested. Do you have such a feeling also, or such a debate about this concept in this new lifestyle, or maybe this new working style? It's for me, I know myself as a prophet of human communication, because I think that it's really unnecessary for the new organization institutions.
You mean like in post-pandemic, there are more online communication, and the younger generations are focusing on their phone, so there are definitely less and less eye contacts in even in-person communication. Yeah.
Right. Just sorry for the interruption. Just it's really hard situation to convince the organization to work on such things, to work on such tema. Most of the time they're just satisfied about such discussions, and they just want to go to some discussions about, as I said, artificial intelligence, something about I don't know, home office, something like that, and personal communication just I think pushed away.
Well, I think the opposite actually. Despite AI online communication, that makes actually the in-person interactions even more precious and more impactful. If you have a high quality communication and interaction in in-person situations. But again, in in-person situations, we have to, maybe the new form of disregard or incivility can be you're just staring in your phone, and instead of paying attention to what the other party is saying or doing. So I think that actually highlight the importance of in-person interactions. I hope others agree. Jeff Kong, do you have some comments?
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma that you bring up, and I hear a lot of different questions that come up. To me, an organization's culture is set at the top, and we're seeing an interesting, at least for me, I'm seeing an interesting migration back to the, in a sense, the older ways. And it's a function of, and Mehdi, you were just bringing it up, the generational piece. We're looking globally at a change of generations, leadership styles and approaches that has a certain age breakout across it. And it was very interesting. You're talking about the Korean pilots and using English as the common language to strip away culture. I hadn't really thought about that before. And then you actually have a flipping of the power balance, because the younger people tend to be more fluent in English because it's become a more lingua franca globally. And the older, more experienced aren't coming from that standpoint. Although aviation tends to be working in English largely. So I see a lot of challenges, but it really is culture being set at the top and how it flows down, and the external pressures that leadership has in terms of delivering results, or they're out. So they have like a, I don't know, 3 to 5 year window now, it seems, before they're, if they don't produce. And sometimes they don't look down, they're more focused out. And how to navigate that challenge as new generations come in, and you see stories about older generation trying to figure out how to deal with Gen Z and their desire to have more power earlier, feedback more frequently, and that sort of thing. So it's a interesting set of dilemmas that is going on. And in some cultures, being very aggressive is the norm. And if you're not used to that, it can be very problematic for you as an individual or group of individuals. And so sorry, bit of a ramble.
Thank you for sharing that. And Rebecca, your comments, and you want to share with us?
Sure. I just, and it's also a question for you too, because speaking about Korean culture, I lived in Korea quite a long time, and I worked in a Korean company as the only non-Korean person. And I found it difficult to also balance speaking up, or I mentioned in the chat, people would yell and yell very loudly, and I didn't know what to do with that. And in American context, I would probably say something, but I could not say something, and I just kept silent, or I would say one thing and then stop. It was very, very challenging. And then one time my boss, the CEO, said to me, he was yelling on the phone to not the employees, but other people, and really seemed out of control to me. And he came over afterwards, after he calmed down a moment, and he said, "I'm sorry, Rebecca, this is Korean culture." So I wanted to ask your opinion about, as a outsider, outsider in that kind of work context, what do you think is acceptable behavior? And also, could you explain why in certain cultures people yell like that in a work context?
Well, I think it's not only in Korean cultures, like Chinese and Japanese organizations, and that's pretty even Vietnamese organizations, and it's pretty common. Is there's some again, the social interdependence, the social hierarchies seem to play a role, that people think the relational metaphors they use are like the bosses are like parents. So in the Western world, the metaphor we use for leader is like a coach. Good leaders can be good coach that help you to perform better. Versus in the East Asian cultures, and bosses are like a father. A father can beat you and yell at you. all for the goodness of your professional development. They're for your growth, for you to be better. So that it's that kind of implicit message. Beyond that, maybe that's a way to, or you're being yelled at sometimes means the boss is paying attention to you, meaning maybe you have potential. So people can interpret that way. That's again what the research shows. People are more acceptable in those ways. And then in the conflict and the incivility literature, there's also the role of the bystander, those who are on the side observing this. So in Western organizations, you try to bring up the justice, try to speak up for the victim, versus in Eastern cultures, people may not feel, okay, it's between the boss and the subordinate, it's inappropriate to speak up. So that's the huge cultural difference there. I do want to let Jean, Jean, you have comments? Probably.
Yeah, thank you. I actually wanted to share a very interesting story that I think aligns with what you've been talking about. I had a faculty member share with me that her student asked the faculty if she can connect him to somebody at Microsoft, not as an interview, but just an informational meeting. So just a courtesy, maybe 15-minute get to know, but it would be an opportunity for the student to make an impression, so to speak, for future opportunities. Anyway, so the faculty member arranged it, and the student met with the manager at Microsoft, and afterwards, faculty asked the manager at Microsoft, saying, "What did you think about the student?" And the manager said, "You know, the student was disrespectful, just not interested." And the manager had this impression that, why would you even recommend or ask me to meet the student who obviously didn't want to be here, kind of thing. That was the impression. So the faculty member was so shocked because it's a really good student. I mean, she wouldn't recommend just any student.
Yeah.
And so she went to the student and said, "So what happened?" And the student was really shocked because he thought actually the meeting went well. But what happened was, because he was being very conscientious of time, say 15 minutes, he kept checking his phone. So young people often don't wear watches. They check their phone to sort of see time.
Yeah.
And so he kept looking at the phone multiple times during the short meeting. And that gave the impression to the manager saying, you know, you don't want to be here, that you're distracted. So completely unintentional, but the message was, well, it certainly hurt his opportunity because of that.
That's a great example, Jean, especially applied to today's generation. Just checking on your phone is a normal behavior, but not for others is perceived as not paying attention, not being respectful. That's great. Emma.
Yes, thank you for your talk. So I'm just wondering whether there's some ways that you have discovered, apart from using English language, to mitigate the power gap between, you know, people who live in a hierarchical, far power distance culture, right? Because the work context where I am is Hong Kong, right? And I'm a university teacher in Hong Kong, and it is just basically pretty shocking. Even though we all speak English here, it's been 150 years of colonial rule, but it's just shocking to see how fast the university culture has changed from a relatively democratic culture, where the power relations were relatively flat to one of hierarchical culture within the space of 4 years. So clearly the English language is not doing that for us. I'm just wondering whether there's any other examples of negotiating and changing and introducing a more inclusive workplace culture if your start place is, you know, the authoritarian and hierarchical. Thank you.
Right, thank you. That's certainly a very challenging situation you're in, but I think we end up with, I guess if everything fails, showing your respect and your sincerity of trying inclusion always helps. So I think there's research find that everyone, all humans, and AI has yet to catch up on that, is that humans, we can always tell what is a sincere smile versus a fake smile, right? So if you're sincere in doing things and trying, no matter the language, no matter the hierarchy, no matter the language, the cultural situations, if you're sincere, your message, you're showing respect, is always, the message always carries and communicates. And but this also brings up a very good question about like shall we all take acting lessons? This is a typical question in leadership development, right? And we know professional actors, they can act very sincerely, they can act or even learn the accent. If you're Meryl Streep, you can speak Polish English or German English or whatever. But like, how much do we effort or resources do we want to deploy in terms of communicating cross-culturally? Or do we learn about the other languages? So I think that's a perpetual challenge for anyone who's working in multicultural situations. It ends up in our individual choice, but with limited resources and the capacity, I think some of our research find that sincerity certainly works, and also cultivating global identity. I know some of Nancy Barkin's work also touches on like global, identify yourself as a global citizen instead of just locally attached. That can sometimes help build the bridges and find common ground with others, especially in potentially conflicting misunderstanding situations or tense situations. So I'm sorry, that's not a straightforward answer because we don't have a straightforward answer from the research yet. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
I know we're a little bit after time here, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. But yet, this is really, I feel like we're just starting to get into the really meaty stuff. So I don't want to cut us off too early. But I did put a link in for registering for the next session. But please continue. I'm going to keep the session running as long as people want to stay.
Yeah, I'll hang around. Yeah, next gossip is another wonderful topic in cross-cultural situations next week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So if there's no further questions, thank you so much, Leigh Anne. This was wonderful. Really, really. I apologize for my connection issues and the recording that kept popping up. So recording will not be ideal, but those who were here got to experience it live. That was great.
Yeah, and I want to comment on Jeff's comments about in uptight hierarchical situations, the benefit of socializing outside the work, wine and dine, can give you opportunities to communicate better and navigate negative effects of workplace tensions.
Excellent. Yes, I agree completely. Everyone have a great rest of your Friday and weekend.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.